Hello, it's been a while. Millie is joining me for today's video, but I thought I would talk about something, heel work and lead walking, because every now and then I get an influx of messages, questions, and it's either people who are new followers or sometimes old followers asking for lead walking tips, heel work tips, especially when I post videos like this morning on my Instagram stories of Millie walking very nicely next to me. And I've made a few different videos about this before on Instagram, TikTok, and it's more just sharing our journey rather than sharing any tips. But I thought I would just talk about it in a YouTube video so that when people ask me about this, I can just point them in the direction of this video. So this video is not going to be, top tips for heel work or, me telling you what to do with your dog. It's going to be me telling you what I've done with my dogs and the journey we've been through. And also to say that even after all of this training and everything that we've done, they still can't heel in some environments. They still can't walk nicely on the lead in some places or in, with some certain, distractions, etc. So where do we begin? Let's start with Millie. Millie as a puppy, because when Millie was a puppy, I did everything kind of right. Let's say I followed a process of teaching her to heel indoors next to me. I started teaching her gradually in different environments, but then Millie got to a certain age and she was still really young. She was still a young puppy, and I just started to expect her to heel everywhere. I started to expect her to walk nicely on the lead in environments where she'd never been before, with distractions that she'd never, been trained around. And I just expected her to know how to walk on a lead because I taught her a few times, and she was really good at it in certain places. And for some reason, it didn't click to me that, have you trained her in those environments? Have you trained her? Have you proofed her training, let's say? And the answer was no. But also, as Millie started to get older, let's say about 8-9 months old, so we're in the teenage phase now, and her lead walking wasn't always terrible. I'd say I started to notice that on the way home from the park, she walked perfectly. To some places that were super boring, or like around the block, let's say, she was fine. But I started to notice that when we walk into the park, she found it so exciting on the way there that she would scream. And it started to get to a point where she would start to whine loudly and scream and squeal before we'd even get to the park. So I didn't really know what, I'd never heard a Spaniel scream. I didn't know it was a normal thing. And to be honest, it should not be normal. She was so frustrated and excited to get to the park that that's what she would do. And I didn't know how to deal with it. And all I saw was people online saying, the stop-start method, just do the stop-start method. That made things a million times worse. If I was walking and I would stop walking, she would scream because she was getting so frustrated by the fact that we weren't getting any closer to the park that that's what she would do. And it would take me like 40 minutes to walk what should have been like a 5-minute journey. It was very painful. And I persevered. I thought, I'm just going to keep stop-start, keep doing stop-start. And I'd get annoyed and I'd yank her on the lead and I just didn't know what else to do until we got to, and like some days were better than others. And even given all of that, when we walked home, she would walk home perfectly. No issues. I wouldn't even have to ask her to heel. Like, she'd just heel. So I was like, she knows what heel means. Why can't she do it on the way to the park? Why is she being ignorant? Why is she, not obeying my commands? She was just so overstimulated and so excited and over-aroused by the fact that we were going to the park that that's what she did. She just whined and squealed. And because I hadn't really taught her otherwise, I hadn't taught her that going to the park isn't always an exciting thing. We don't always go to the park and run around and be feral and you know, fun things are always happening there. So what did we do? So when we got Lady was 1.5 years old. Millie was the same age because they're little mates. When we got Lady, Millie wants to lie down, hang on. Let me cross my legs for you, my girl. When we got Lady, now Lady was even worse. Not in terms of any like noise, but the pulling. So it's like, right, I'm starting from square one with Lady. Millie is like hit and miss. She's okay some days, she can whine and scream other days, she can walk home fine. So I ended up going to a dog trainer, mainly because Millie was doing some things that I was like, I don't know what to do about this. You know, she started getting really scared of the car. She would like run away at the end of a walk because she didn't want to go back to the car, but I couldn't like associate the two because I'd never experienced anything like that before. And then Lady had her challenges. So I went to a dog trainer, and actually the lead walking wasn't even like the first thing that I spoke about and that I wanted to work on. But then when I described what Millie did, and also what Lady did, which was similar, like the closer we would get to the park, Lady would, again, if I did stop-start, she would start barking because Lady didn't like being still. So I spoke to a dog trainer, and that's when I started to learn about arousal and the things to do, and like, you know, frustration stacking, is that what it's called? Frustration stacking, how to work on arousal and lowering arousal. You want to come up? Or do you want to just sit there? She's just staring. So with Millie, we ended up, and Lady, we ended up working on their arousal and helping to lower their arousal by using pattern games. Because if the girls were over aroused and they were frustrated, there was no way that me asking them to heel was going to register in their brains and they were going to listen to that. So Millie and Lady used to get so excited about going to the park that what I ended up having to do was walk almost in stages, like walk up to the point where they were starting to get a bit aroused or over aroused, and we would do some scatter feeding to try and lower their arousal, and then I would do pattern games, and then we would turn around and go home. So it was almost like stages, walking in stages to get to the park, and this took a while. And we also started walking past the park, so I would use a harness. I use a slip lead a lot. Like I mainly use slip leads because we do gun dog training and I want them to walk nicely on a slip lead. So for me, the best thing to do is always use it, especially in like everyday scenarios where we can train and they can learn to walk nicely on a slip lead. But I would use a harness because if they were pulling, like no amount of correction, yanking, whatever was gonna, you know, do anything for them because all they wanted to do was get to the park. So I would use a harness because I didn't want them to get used to pulling on a slip lead, and I also didn't want them to hurt themselves. So we'd use a harness and we would walk to the park and then past the park. And it was so like funny because you could see the moment where in their little brains they would realise we're not going into the park. Because for Millie especially, and with Lady, like dogs predict things. And for Millie, it's like she just has a crystal ball, this dog. She will predict everything to like, she's constantly trying to figure out what's next. And for her, she was always predicting, we're going to the park. Even we'd walk out the front door, we're going to the park. I know something exciting's happening. So when you get to that point where you get to the park and then you keep going, she's like, oh my God, we're not going to the park. And just doing that and almost working like, so working against her, how do I word this? Because there's a phrase for this, there's a term for this. So I was just lowering the predictability essentially. So we would go to the park and we would do pattern games, which aren't, you know, super exciting and like over arousing. And then some days we would walk past the park, and we actually walk past the park quite a lot. Other days we would drive to the park because that was just the easier option than walking 2 dogs at the same time that loved to pull when we were on the way to the park. And doing that religiously whilst also practicing their heel in the, like, at home. We used to live in an apartment before we moved here a year ago. So practicing their heel work in boring places, making sure that it was clear what was expected of them. And they always walked nicely, like in boring places anyway, but just making sure that I was being consistent with what was expected of them. So we did that, and then we moved house a year ago. And it was like everything kind of had to start from scratch, essentially, because they were in a new environment. They'd never been here before. They'd never walked the routes that we've walked around here. And they'd already learned that when they are, over aroused, frustrated, they kind of go back to those old behaviours of whining. Millie didn't really get to the point of screaming because what I'd learned is like not to really let her get to that point. And that being said, there's obviously some situations that I put her in where she has done that. Again, we won't talk about those today. But yeah, like what I've learned is almost how to manage their arousal in various environments and lower their frustration, and not like just lower my expectations. And like if they were pulling and if I was struggling with it, then I needed to work on it. And our walks, like I'd say, weren't always enjoyable. And the thing is, when I take my girls out for a walk, I take them on a walk for them. Like I don't really go on a walk because I want the exercise, or I want, to walk 5k one day. Like I walk up to where I feel like, it's more training. And maybe, you might listen to this and think, God, you're just always training your dogs, or, how can they be happy and fulfilled if you're always expecting them to heel? Like that's obviously not the case. Like I just want them to walk nicely from at the house to the park, and then they can do what they want. We have plenty of walks. Even when we train, to be honest, we do like 5 minutes training and then they go run around and do what they want. But when we moved house, the park is not far away. And I remember that first walk to the park, it was okay because they were like, where are we? Don't know where we are. And then when they started to associate that park with being a fun place, then the pulling started. And actually, I never really let them walk all the way to the park and pull to the park, because that's where, again, I started training them and we started doing it in stages. And I remember even when we have like a loop that we do, when we started walking this loop, the first couple of times, Millie and Lady were walking perfectly because they were like, this is new. And they were almost a bit like timid. I don't even know how to explain it. Like when they go to new places, they can either be like very like quiet and like what's going on, or they can be the polar opposite. And for them, doing this loop round, the first couple of times it was like, don't know what's going on here. We're going to behave ourselves. And then a few more times when they started to realise that, oh, actually, if we go this way, this is going to lead to an exciting, run around on this field, or, so they start to then predict. And there was that loop that we got stuck, me and Millie especially, we got stuck like at a certain point, I'd say halfway, where Millie would start to really like whine and get frustrated. And I remember for ages, we would walk up to that point, do pattern games, do some scatter feeding, and turn around and go home. And I started to feel like, oh my God, this is just never ever going to improve. This is my life. And the thing is, like, that's just the way it is. I feel like when you teach your dog something, you can't just expect them to execute, a heel perfectly then in every single environment and every, scenario that you put them in. It's just unfair. So, like, actually understanding that and taking the time to then train them and not just think, oh, I want to go on a walk and my dog's pulling, so I'm just going to put a figure of 8 lead on them because I don't want them pulling on our walk. Like, I'd rather take the time and the pain that comes with it to just walk 5 meters down the road and then turn around. Because eventually, it's been a year now, Millie will heel perfectly to the park. Some days she might pull, but it's nothing horrendous. And it's like pulling a few steps ahead. Nothing horrendous. Lady's the same. Lady's a bit more excitable than Millie when it comes to like walking into the park, but she can still heel nicely into the park. I take them beating, and to be honest, Lady's not really been out that much this season. Millie's been out twice. Millie will pull. When she's off lead, she heels a bit better, but I like to keep her on the lead and she starts to pull because it's so exciting for her. And I've taken her out quite a few times, like leading up to the season, to try and train her just to walk nicely on the lead and to not be so over aroused. But with Millie, we're struggling a bit in that environment. She just likes to do things. She wants to do something. And once I get her doing something, then she's fine. Then she'll heel perfectly. Then she'll, not be whining. So, I don't know, like, I just wanted to get that out there because I feel like there's no simple answer to, oh, how do I do this with my dog? How do I achieve this with my dog? Because A, I'm not a dog trainer, but B, I feel like there's so much more to understand about like walking nicely on the lead. Like even with Millie, she has like mild hip dysplasia. She has a lot of muscular tension. She's been doing physio since January. So she was in pain for a long time and still is sometimes, but I was expecting her to do things or to heal when A, she's in pain, B, her like frustration is through the roof, like she's so over aroused that she can't even like register what I'm saying to her, and then I'm just like stood at the other end of the lead like heel. And don't get me wrong, sometimes even now I still will get frustrated with them, but it happens a lot less often now because we've been hammering this and we've been so consistent for like well over a year, and even with that, like, they're still not perfect, they're not robots. And I just wanted to share that because it's not as easy as just saying, oh, I did this and that's what helped, or I got a slip lead and that's what's helped them heal nicely. That's absolutely not the case. So hopefully, I guess what I want is people to watch this and think, oh shit, okay, it's not really that simple. I mean, it could be that simple for you. It could be simple and it might not take you as long as it took me. But getting a trainer, speaking to a trainer, and I know, sometimes you might see a trainer and it might just not work out, but that's fine. There's plenty of other good trainers. Like a lot of people message me saying, oh, I did a 6-week course, or I went to a trainer and my dog still can't heel. Like, there's a lot of homework you need to do, but also actually finding the right trainer for you. Like, I'm sure if I went to a gun dog trainer, some gun dog trainers, let's say, they probably wouldn't have said, oh, what you need to do are patting games to help lower your dog's arousal. Like, they probably wouldn't have said that. So it's just finding what works for you, for what you need. Do I need Millie and Lady to heel on every single walk, or, to be at my heel constantly? Like, no, not all the time, but do I want them to heel nicely to the park, which is like less than 5 minutes, and not pull on the lead and not be off their tits, over aroused? Yes, because to me, if they are constantly over aroused, they're just going to be constantly stressed, frustrated. Like, it must not be a nice feeling to be constantly in a state of over arousal just to get to the park for something so simple. So like when we walk around the block, they do walk nicely, like next to me, they do heel, but we don't always do walks like that where they're heeling, round the block. We will heel to the park and then they train, and then they can run around and do what they want. So it just depends on what you want. And I know lots of people that, either use a flexi line, or like sometimes we use a 3-meter lead, especially when Millie's like injured herself in the past, and I'm like, I don't really want you off lead, but I don't want you healing. I'll use a 3-meter lead. Or if, we go somewhere new and I know that she's going to be over aroused and I don't want her on a short lead because she's just going to get even more frustrated, I'll put her on a 3 metre lead. But yeah, like, you know, if she's on a 3 metre lead, I don't want her bouncing off the end of the lead constantly, which she doesn't do. So it's just, you know, what do you want to get out of your dog? What do you want to do with your dog? And also, what was I going to say something else then? I don't know, I feel like I'm just ranting now. I'm just on a, like, going down a rabbit hole and just saying random things about lead walking. But yeah, it takes time. And even though you see Millie and Lady walking nicely, it took us ages. It took us a very long time. And with Bruce, like, I don't intend on expecting him to heal in different environments and different places for a long time. So yeah, let me know if you've got any like questions or any comments, or if you've had like a similar journey with lead walking. Or yeah, Millie's fast asleep on my lap and my legs are going numb, so I'm going to end it there. Thanks for watching.